The airport lounge buzzed with the usual mix of weary travelers, businessmen tapping away on laptops, and flight attendants preparing for boarding. Among them was Marcus Reed, a sharp-dressed black CEO in his early 40s. With his tailored suit, polished shoes, and calm authority, Marcus exuded quiet power. He had spent 2 decades building his company into a global powerhouse, and now he was on his way to finalize a $500 million deal with an international airline. What no one in the terminal knew was that the man waiting at Gate A23 was indeed just another traveler. He was about to decide the future of the very airline he was flying on. When boarding was announced, Marcus walked confidently to the jet bridge. His first-class ticket was neatly tucked in his hand. As he stepped inside the plane, a flight attendant greeted him with a polite smile, but the moment didn't last long. Just as Marcus reached his assigned seat, 2A, he felt a sharp tap on his shoulder. "Excuse me," came a clipped voice. A middle-aged white passenger, red-faced and scowling, stood behind him. "That's my seat." Marcus glanced at his ticket.com as ever. "I believe this is my seat," he replied evenly, holding up his boarding pass. The man's face twisted with irritation. "You must be mistaken. First class isn't for everyone, you know. Maybe check with the attendant for your actual seat in economy." His words dripped with entitlement. Passengers nearby shifted uncomfortably, watching the scene unfold. Before Marcus could respond, a flight attendant hurried over. "Sir, is there a problem?" "Yes," the white passenger snapped. "This man is in my seat. Can you please move him?" Marcus handed his ticket to the attendant without a word. She scanned it quickly, then looked apologetic. "Sir, it seems both of your tickets say to let me check with the captain." But instead of resolving the issue fairly, the flight attendant leaned toward Marcus and whispered firmly, "Maybe it's best if you wait in economy for now until we sort this out." A hush fell over the cabin. The white passenger smirked victoriously as Marcus, still composed, stared at the attendant in disbelief. He had paid for first class, he had the right to that seat, yet here he was, being quietly asked to move simply because it was easier for them to appease the louder, whiter passenger. Reluctantly, Marcus picked up his briefcase and walked down the aisle to economy. Murmurs rippled through the plane. Some passengers shook their heads in disgust. Others stayed silent, afraid to get involved. The humiliation was sharp, but Marcus's expression never cracked. He sat down in a cramped economy seat, his expensive suit pressed against the narrow armrests. He didn't argue. He didn't protest. But deep inside, he was already making a decision, one that would cost the airline far more than they could ever imagine. The flight had barely taken off, but Marcus Reed's mind was in tea on the cramped seat or the cheap meal tray balanced before him. He stared quietly out the window, his jaw tight. He had faced racism in boardrooms, in negotiations, even in luxury hotels. But being escorted out of first class on his own, paid ticket and in front of dozens of watching eyes stung in a way he couldn't, shake. The white passenger now lounged comfortably in 2A, sipping champagne, his smug grin visible each time the curtain separating first class from economy shifted. Every glance was a silent reminder, "You don't belong here." Marcus adjusted his cufflinks and took a slow breath. On his wrist gleamed a custom timepiece, a symbol of his status and hard-earned success. He wasn't just any businessman. He was the man this airline's executives had been chasing for months, desperate to lock in his $500 million partnership deal. A deal that could either expand their global reach or vanish into thin air. As the hours passed, Marcus opened his laptop and drafted an email. His fingers moved with precision, every word calculated. He wasn't going to argue with a flight attendant or demand his seat back. No, his revenge would come in silence, wrapped in the power they never realized he had. Halfway through the flight, another humiliation came. When drinks were being served, the attendant skipped Marcus's row, serving those in front and behind him. When he pressed the call button, she responded with an icy smile. "I'm sorry, sir. We're out of that option. Perhaps water?" The tone carried no apology, only dismissal. A couple across the aisle exchanged uncomfortable glances, whispering, "Oh." The disrespect wasn't hidden anymore. Then, as if fate wanted to punctuate the cruelty, turbulence shook the cabin. Luggage rattled overhead. The white passenger in 2A called for help, demanding special attention. 3 attendants rushed to calm him, adjusting his seat, offering reassurance. Marcus simply sat still, unbothered. his calmness a sharp contrast to the chaos up front. When the plane finally touched down, Marcus closed his laptop. His email was finished, his decision made. As the passengers disembarked, he waited until last. The white passenger strutted out first, still grinning, still believing he had one. The attendants avoided Marcus's gaze as he stepped into the jet bridge. But just outside the terminal doors, his phone buzzed. A voice message from one of his senior managers awaited him. "Sir, the airline board is preparing for your arrival tomorrow. They're excited to sign the contract. They've arranged a formal dinner." Marcus's lips curved into a cold smile. "Not anymore," he muttered under his breath. By the time his driver arrived, Marcus had already forwarded his email. Subject line was simple: contract termination notice, effective immediately. The airline's executives would wake up to a nightmare. They thought they were gaining a $500 million partner. No. Instead, they had just lost him because of their own staff's arrogance and prejudice. Marcus was only getting started. The next morning, chaos rippled through the headquarters of Skylarks Airlines. Executives in crisp suits flooded the boardroom, voices overlapping in panic. Their $500 million deal, months in the making, had collapsed overnight. The reason? A single email. The name signed at the bottom made their stomachs drop. Marcus Reed, CEO of Reed Global Holdings. The very man their flight staff had humiliated the night before. Within hours, news spread beyond the boardroom. Screens lit up across media outlets. Black CEO cancels $500 million deal after airline discrimination scandal. Social media caught fire. Hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag flying while black. Hashtag boycott Skylux. Passengers shared their own stories of mistreatment, and the airline's polished image crumbled by the second. That afternoon, the airline scrambled for damage control. A formal dinner had been scheduled with Marcus to celebrate the deal. Instead, they were forced to meet him face-to-face in an emergency session. Marcus entered the conference room with quiet authority, dressed in a tailored suit. Cameras lined the walls. He had insisted the press be present. The executives plastered on nervous smiles, their charm dripping with desperation. "Reed," one began, voice trembling, "this is all a misunderstanding. If we could just—" Marcus raised a hand. The room fell silent. "A misunderstanding?" His voice was calm, but each word cut deep. "Your staff dragged me out of first class. They gave my seat, my paid seat, to someone else. They refused me service. You call that a misunderstanding?" The CEO of Skylarks cleared his throat, forcing a laugh. "Our employees may have overreacted. We assure you, corrective training will." Marcus leaned forward. "You think this is about training? This is about dignity, respect, humanity, values your airline clearly does not have." The cameras zoomed in as Marcus placed a folder on the table. Inside were screenshots of his ticket purchase, photos taken by passengers, and written statements from witnesses. Evidence beyond denial. One journalist shouted a question. "Mr. Reed, what message are you sending by canceling the deal?" Marcus glanced at the camera, his voice firm and deliberate. "I am sending the message that money cannot excuse racism. My company will not invest in an airline that treats its customers or its people like second-class citizens. $500 million is nothing compared to self-respect." Gasps echoed across the room. The airline executives exchanged horrified looks. Shareholders watching the live broadcast began dumping stock. By the end of the day, Skylarks shares plummeted 20%. As Marcus stood to leave, the CEO of Skylarks pleaded, "Please reconsider. We'll fire the staff responsible immediately." Marcus paused at the door, then turned back. "Fire them? No, this isn't about a few bad employees. This is about the culture you allowed to grow, and now the world can see it clearly." He walked out, flashes from cameras trailing him. Outside, a crowd of reporters cheered his stand. To them, Marcus wasn't just a CEO. He was a symbol of power, resilience, and justice. For Skylarks, it was the beginning of their downfall. For Marcus, it was a reminder that sometimes the greatest victories come not from silence, but from standing tall when the world tries to push you down. The end.